So in this video, I used Uranus, who got adjustments on his passive and first skill. His first skill used to stack and the damage would keep increasing. The good thing about it was that the enemy couldn't see his stacks, and many players didn't know about that mechanic of Uranus, which is why a lot of them got surprised by his damage when he had max stacks, especially in the early game. Now, his damage is mostly based on his radiant stacks. Also, Uranus's basic attack damage is now higher, so he can be used for split pushing. Suddenly I was up against 4 enemies here, and I became overconfident in Uranus's tankiness. That was my mistake. He's no longer as tanky as before in the early game. That's why I got killed twice early in this match. So you still need to be careful in the early game because he's not that tanky yet. My first build on him is Thunderbelt, and I think you should always build this because his basic attacks got buffed, so you'll be using basic attacks more often now than before. That's why Thunderbelt is a really solid first item for him. It also serves as your late game insurance, so if the game drags on, at least you already have a lot of stacks. The hybrid defense you get from each stack is also important, and the true damage adds up to his newly buffed basic attacks. The slow effect is also good, even if it's a bit short. Fanny's cables were really impressive here. I was up against Yujin here in the EXP lane, and he really has the advantage in the early game, though it still depends on the user. In the mid to late game, Yujin will have a hard time bursting Uranus because his HP regen becomes very high. When Uranus gets ahead in the early game, he becomes really hard to deal with because it's difficult to burst him down unless you gank him. But if you want to use Uranus, you also need to know how to pick your matchups. Like in this game, their jungler is Fredrin, who can't kill Uranus at all. Their roamer is Florin, who has no crowd control to lock me down. And Yujin also can't burst me. Plus, their marksman was trash, so Uranus was a great pick here. I used the common emblem here for the hybrid regen, because Uranus consumes a lot of mana, and common emblem is really the best for him. Although in this game, it seemed like the mana regen wasn't enough, mainly because after my 2 deaths in the early game, I didn't go back to base anymore. But here I almost recalled, but since my HP was recovering, I decided not to. But seriously, I tried a few times to recall to base, it just kept getting interrupted by enemies. That's why for almost the whole game, my mana was barely hanging on. Just a few moments ago I was almost dead, but now my HP is nearly full again. It's just that my mana takes so long to recover. Maybe it's also affected by the removal of the mana stat from Dominance Ice, which is why the common emblem alone isn't really enough, though you can use Inspire or Impure Rage in your emblem if you want to avoid running out of mana too often. But I stick with Brave Smite because I like the extra sustain. Here I really wanted to recall to regen my mana, but the enemies just wouldn't let me. I use Sprint as my battle spell here, because I noticed that most of the time, he can't escape from enemies when there's crowd control and slows, like in this case, since he lacks mobility when using Revitalize. But Revitalize is still good though. It depends on the enemy and your teammate's lineup. Even though its healing was reduced by 5%, it's still good because the life bane effects from items were also reduced. And it's more effective when used by heroes with healing like Uranus, since it boosts the healing from his passive. He's really good against other sustain heroes because there's no way Uranus can be bursted down by them. Uranus will just stack up his Thunderbelt, so it's a great matchup for him. Unless the enemy also builds Thunderbelt, in that case you'll both just end up farming Thunderbelt stacks. But in this game, Yujin doesn't usually build Thunderbelt, so I had a big advantage in the matchup. Fredrin and Florin, they can't do anything. Even when we're at the same level in gold here, they still couldn't do anything. What more if I have the lead like this? Though against other heroes, that combo is actually good, but not against Uranus. Who can burst me down? Their only hope is Layla. But nah, What do you expect from a Layla user? They're just tapping the basic attack button, not even using their brain to think or adjust their items during the game. I even went straight to their base just to see what would happen if they used all their skills on me. They barely even wanted to bother with me anymore. I tried to push the turret here, but it was risky because Layla had already respawned. I might get bursted by the turret. It deals true damage after all, and Uranus can definitely be bursted down by it. Actually, Layla's damage really does hurt. Look, she took down Granger in like 2 hits. It's just that my Thunderbelt stacks were already super high here, and Layla didn't build any items to counter tanky heroes like DHS, Malefic Roar, or Sea Halberd. I also built Curse Helmet here, which really depends on your preference, but I think it's a viable option for Uranus. I just focused on the turret here, ignoring the enemies. Akai was actually solid in this game too. Looked like he wanted to save the enemy in that part. So yeah, the pressure that Uranus can create is a huge help. Just avoid the mistakes I made in the early game where I got too aggressive and ended up getting killed twice. And yeah, Layla users are really something else. I played again, and this time my lane opponent was Phoveus, who for many players is considered the strongest EXP laner. But for me, it really depends on the hero composition of both teams. And for players out there who have a specific role they like to play, like jungler, EXP, roamer, or mid lane, but need to pick at least 2 roles and end up getting your second choice, here's my tip. Select gold lane as your second choice, even if you don't know how to play it, because 99% of the time, you won't end up in gold lane. There are just too many players picking it. Almost every match I play, everyone selects gold lane. So the chance of you getting gold lane is super low because of how many people go for it. If I want to be a jungler, I just select jungle and gold lane. If I want to be an EXP laner, I select EXP and gold lane. And I swear, you won't have that problem anymore. And if ever you do get gold lane, just swap with a teammate because, like I said, almost everyone wants to go gold lane anyway. But the thing is, if you want to be a gold laner as a solo player, then the chances are really low. Just because you want it doesn't mean you'll get it. And just because you don't want it doesn't mean it won't happen. My suggestion is to just play duo, because that way you have a 100% chance of getting your gold lane. If your friend wants mid lane and you want gold lane, both of you can just select gold and mid. Then if your roles get swapped, just trade with each other. Easy, right? That's one of the good things about the current lane selection system. If you have a duo or even a trio, your lanes are almost locked in right away. It also helps avoid lane stealing and prevents other players from needing to adjust too much. But of course, the dark system players are still out there, like someone choosing roam but then locking in a marksman and going as a roamer. By the way, early in this game, I built Dreadnoughty armor for protection against Phoveus so I wouldn't get bursted. It's always better to be safe than sorry, so if you don't want your life to be miserable, use protection. I also used Inspire in my emblem here, so the +2 mana regen and cooldown reduction really helped. unlike in the first game where I kept running out of mana. I even just dove into the enemy base because it was getting boring. But honestly, Uranus is really hard to use if you're a solo player and you don't have reliable teammates. No matter how much pressure you're creating or how much space you're giving your team, if they don't take advantage of it, Uranus ends up feeling useless.